In order for us to know how we got here and where we are going, we need to understand our history. Nothing happens by accident. It is the sugar beets that attract people. It is also what makes the Great Plains the economic heart of Colorado. The wealthiest product to come from Colorado ever was the sugar beets. Nowadays, we think of the plains as this wasteland. The plains were actually the economic center. World War I, so sugar beets in Europe, forget about it because of the war. The fields are destroyed. So Colorado takes advantage of that. As the land was cheap, the labor was cheap. For the farmers, it's a great cash crop. Profit margins in sugar beets are enormous in the 1920s. So essentially, there was a presence here, but it's not massive until sugar beets come to this part of the state. And there you have a major importation of two sources of labor. One, it's Hispanics that are from southern Colorado and northern New Mexico. And then the other group is people coming straight from Mexico. And they are attracted by the demand for labor by the sugar beet industry. So essentially you have like two layers to this cake. They kind of meet here in the eastern plains and the front range of Colorado, working side by side. So their perspectives kind of are different, but they meet in the beet fields, live side by side in the colonias that were created by the companies. The wealth of Colorado was built on the sweat of these people. So these are the people that made Colorado rich by working hard, week after week, month after month, season after season. This is a family story. The whole family worked in the sugar beets. Particularly during harvest season, children were pulled out of school to work in the beets. So the whole family had to contribute in order to make it here. So it was a family enterprise. So it's a story more of community. So sometimes we forget the historical connections to peoples and places that are so close to us. There's still a very old brick building. That's all that is left of the sugar factory. So imagine this huge building with smokestacks, with chimneys. It is no accident that the Hispanics live there. So they are close to the factory, close to the fields, but a world away from Old Town.
The who has to be the central part of any story. You can't tell a story without the characters.
If you don't know Betty Aragon Mitotes, then you have not done your history. You have not done your research. You do not understand a lot about the history of Fort Cummings.
So she's a force of nature.
She's obviously been, a key fixture in the Fort Collins community for many years.
She's initiated so many amazing projects.
I think that Betty's doing a wonderful work, helping us not forget or helping us learn that there were people before us, and they set in motion forces that to this day affect us.
My name is Betty Aragon Mitotes, and I've been an advocate for the Hispanic community for over 20 years now.
One of the things that's always important to me is making sure that we have that history part in there. Because these are the folks that we stand on their shoulders. They made it possible for us to be where we are. Never, ever forget our ancestors and where we come from, because they sacrificed for us. And that's what my films are about. You know, it's about bringing life to the struggle and making sure that we educate the community. That's what my purpose in life is, really, is not only to be of service to the community, but to also educate the community of the struggles that people go through.
You know, we could do a museum. And I said, a museum? And she said, yes. And I said, what kind of museum? And she said, you know, to honor the Hispanic people. It was the only house in Andersonville that was an adobe home. I wanted to be able to do more. I wanted to be able to do the backpack program, posadas, to do other programming to help empower women. We added to the story of Sugar Beet Park, and with adding to the story, I wanted to do something to honor the Hispanic and Mexican people that came to work in the sugar beet industry. We have a lot of folks in the community that are amplifying their voices and continuing the work that is so needed in the community. So I'm very proud of that.
The seed for something has to start, and you have to have the basis, right? And I think that then you can take the whole image of a fan as it opens up. It always has a central point that controls all of the different blades of the fan, right? All the subsequent work following what Betty Aragon Mitotes has done, I think you now can look into various people and various organizations around Fort Collins that are really doing so much for the community. My name is Andrea Purdy.
I'm Martin Carkson.
My name is Claudia Maria Menendez.
I am an associate professor of Spanish, teaching professor that is.
I'm a communication studies professor here at Colorado State University.
I'm currently the inaugural Chief Equity Officer.
I'm also involved with a research team doing language for specific purposes, which is my latest passion.
And the founder and director of the CSU Center for Public Deliberation, which does a lot of work in the local community here in northern Colorado.
I love the work because it involves needs analysis and involving the community and what the community needs.
We're constantly trying to kind of keep on building that culture in Fort Collins and find ways of, when we want to take on the issues, and we certainly have tough issues that we need to deal with.
We're constantly having to really question, what are we servicing, what are we providing, but who has access to those services?
How do we become more proactive to make sure that we can have these conversations that we need to have for our community to thrive, for everyone in our community to thrive?
You end up learning a lot by being in an institution of higher education, and especially a land-grant institution. You end up learning these stories and you end up learning about them. It's almost been a natural progression of what are the needs of community members.
One big part of that is to make sure that it's local news for everyone in the community. We've been making particular efforts to for our meetings to have translation, to reach out to the Spanish-speaking community, to figure out where they're getting their media, how can we get the media to serve them better.
You need to be constantly asking yourself those questions, and what do we have the power to adjust and fine-tune to increase services for those who are historically underrepresented.
To be a little grain of sand in the part of this whole thing, it really means a lot to me.
I don't think I'll ever lose the patience to take the time to explain something. That's my power and my privilege, is that I have this lived experience being a person of color in a place like Fort Collins. I can share my story and help somebody deepen their understanding.
I'm just one little tiny voice who will always cry in the wilderness and trying to do things to help my community.
I've certainly kind of come across Betty and her work in several different projects over the years.
You see people like her who fight for justice and for a voice.
You know, and I also think of Betty as, you know, not necessarily a quiet warrior, but somebody who's just always working so hard at creating these really monumental things. And then monumental, right, being, you know, the hand that feeds monument. The community sees themselves in the work that she does. I think that that's just such a powerful way of contributing to the community and keeping the legacy alive.
You know, I can't even begin to tell you, every time I go to that monument, there is this flood of emotion that I feel.
If we don't do justice to all of the voices that we have within our community, then we are not being truthful and we're not being honest with ourselves. We really do owe it to the people who came before us to try and remember them and carry on with, you know, and honor their struggles to provide for their own communities.
What I feel is the sacrifice of so many people.
Here we have a community that was exploited. They were used for their cheap labor, but she has turned that story of exploitation into a story of pride.
People don't know that history, right? And so now whoever you are, you stop at that sculpture, you're like, it's an awareness, like it's art bringing awareness to the community. And so it's just such a beautiful kind of, you know, perfect storm kind of stuff, right? Where it was like these fields were sugar beet fields and this is how they were cultivated and this is who, right? And I think that that's what that sculpture does, is it really hones in on the who. This coming together of the community, the Latino community, people who have been around for, I mean, who were betabeleros. And so what an emotional moment to see their history and, you know, and their blood, sweat, and tears kind of manifested in this beautiful sculpture.
You know, anything that helps people feel that they have a place, that they belong, right, that they're part of that history, I think can be critical for bringing communities together.
I'm telling you, I have never been prouder, to be honest with you. That monument, when I see it, it's like what I said on that day, you know, when we unveiled. We have cemented our place in history. And this is for you. This is for our community that did that sacrifice. It's for you. That's why we did it. It was for them.